So hi again, everyone. Marissa Davis here, founder and principal of Tallawah Consulting. I just wanted to continue this series that we have called Tallawah Talks that features a number of change makers who in many ways are championing inclusive impact. Again, I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak with a number of leaders who are doing really great work at the intersection of impact and inclusion. And this evening, today, as part of our series, we have the honor of having Jessica Santana join us today. And I just want to share a bit about her before we get right in. So first and foremost, Jessica, in addition to being a social entrepreneur, she's a technologist, a writer, a philanthropist who's passionate about people, products, and building community. And in 2014, she co-founded America on Tech, which is an early pipeline tech talent accelerator that creates pathways for underrepresented students into technology and innovation. And her work has spanned all 5 boroughs of New York and now includes Los Angeles as well. And the work that both she and her fellow co-founder have done has been featured in media outlets such as Forbes, CNN, Huffington Post. She's also had the opportunity to speak at the White House for TechCrunch and Google. And among many awards that she's received, she has had the fortune of being Forbes 30 Under 30, Wells Fargo Millennial Activist, Ashoka, an American Express Emerging Innovator, Camelback Ventures Social Innovator Fellow, and World Economic Forum Global Shaper. And beyond all of this, Jessica is certainly, you'll hear more as we have this conversation, just passionate about the work that she does and the communities that she has committed her time and career to serving. So really happy to have you with us, Jessica. And let's just get right into it. So first question, what is social entrepreneurship in your own words?
Mm-hmm. Well, first and foremost, I'm so happy to be here with you. I know that you and I met a few years ago, so I appreciate you providing me with an opportunity to be on your platform. Social entrepreneurship for me means the process of identifying social problems and creating programs, products, and services that aim to address those problems. I think that social entrepreneurs, their role is to really identify gaps in our society that are currently not being addressed, that really disproportionately affects, people in a community, whether it be educational gaps, or whether it be workforce gaps, or whether it be gaps as it relates to climate. The roles of social entrepreneurs are to create solutions that actually drive change to address those issues.
Awesome. So, with that kind of operating definition that you've given us, what would you say is the messy problem that you're trying to solve through social entrepreneurship?
Yes. So with America on Tech, we are seeking to address the racial wealth gap among underestimated communities by creating equitable pathways into degrees in careers and technology. So much of our educational system pushes students into either college access or into, trade schools. And at America on Tech, we really see the importance of creating multiple pathways for students to build very important skills that prepare them for 21st century careers. The technology industry is projected to grow to about over 500,000 jobs within the next 10 years. Generation Z, about 65% of them are going to be competing for jobs that have not yet been invented over the next 5 years. And yet so many of our schools don't have access to robust technology education, computer science education. Some students and families lack basic Wi-Fi and computers to even learn how to tinker on technology in the first place. And so for us, we really seek to address the issues of providing students who oftentimes are overlooked and underrepresented with opportunities to compete fairly for 21st century jobs.
Got you. And I mean, among a number of the kind of trending careers and opportunities, I mean, tech has really been at the forefront in many ways. So I'm curious for you, I mean, with this kind of both being the segment of the communities that you're trying to work with and tech being the way that you're going about doing that, why tech and why now?
Yeah, I think that access to technology jobs. Well, let me actually back up a little bit. I think that career development is a social justice issue. If you don't have access to strong career pathways, then you are not on a pathway towards economic empowerment. And economic empowerment means being able to provide for your family, put food on your table, pay your rent, being able to back, the politicians in your community that you want to see on the ballot because you have the financial resources to donate to their political campaigns, right? And so, in my mind, the first step is understanding that career development is a social justice issue. And because career development is a social justice issue and one of the highest growing careers in our country is the technology sector, we are choosing to exploit all of the opportunities within this sector that has very high paying jobs to create pathways for those who don't even know that jobs for them exist within this space. I think that so many young people, are always on the phone right now. They're creating content, they're on Instagram Live, they're posting, they're on Snapchat. Now some of them are on Clubhouse. And I think the one thing that we've not seen is enough language around, hey, you can be the creator of this platform. You can design this platform. You can build this platform. You can product manage this platform. You can be the person in charge of creating security around this platform. And so for us, we really want to shift the mindsets of young people so that they know about the growing technology sector. So several reasons. I think one is because career pathways are very important. I think two, because technology jobs are growing and because they are very high paying jobs. And I think the last thing I'll mention is that the world is going digital. And so for us in our minds, since everything is going online and the world is going digital, it's really important to recognize that at some point in your career, you are going to require some kind of technical skills. And we believe that those skills need to be given to students earlier in the pipeline rather than later.
Gotcha. Absolutely. I mean, it's certainly necessary work, and a number of programs and other kind of tech uh, organizations or programs that are helping young people learn has generally kind of anchored around coding, for example. That's been one of the hot things that people have talked about. Is it just coding that you all offer, or is that what you offer, or what? Just kind of walk us through what these products or services look like for the work that you all are doing.
Yeah, for sure. So we run multi-layered programs for students. We train them on web development, mobile development, or UX design, depending on the skills that they're looking to learn. And then from there, the students are eligible for internships and jobs in our employer partner network. This means we're placing them into internships and we're placing them into jobs. And so our services look like semester long courses, summer long courses, or year long courses, depending on the skill that we're trying to teach. And for us, it's really important to also point out that our products right now, they are in the form of online trainings because we're operating in the virtual environment. But there will be a world where America on Tech is actually both maybe an asynchronous or synchronous learning platform for students all across the country, whether or not they can access our live instruction to be able to learn the skills in our programs without having to be physically with us.
Got you. Yeah, so essentially it is far more than coding, and it's sounds like more of an integrated offering, that you have for these young people. And, I am curious, there are a number of people who enter into the tech space. That was either some kind of work that they had been passionate about as kids, or some happened to kind of stumble into it. For you, you have your social entrepreneurial journey has rested within this space, but how did it begin? Like, how did your social entrepreneurship journey begin?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I will start with like my tech journey. I was coding as early as MySpace days. I was
Oh,
very,
take it back.
yeah, I was very into, creating my own MySpace page layouts, and then it became a side hustle for me. And I was charging people like $20 to $25 to help them like create a custom top 8 and add music and add a background and stuff like that.
Wow.
Then
Mhm.
I just didn't know that in high school. Well, this for me was fun. So I didn't know in high school that this was a career. I
Mhm.
just thought it was something that I would do. And then, following college, I ended up realizing like, hey, I actually could go into a job in this sector. So I ended up starting my career in the private sector in a technology consulting capacity with a large professional services firm, with two large professional services firms. And I really realized that there was a disconnect between, young people in the community that I'm from in Brooklyn, New York, and where I was in my career path. And I knew that there wasn't a lack of talent, that made it such that I was oftentimes the only woman or person of color on my teams. I
Mhm.
just knew that it was just access to opportunities in general. And I wanted to be a part of creating those opportunities because I remember, receiving my first job offer and seeing the salary that was attached to it, and then also at the same time had recently learned what my mom and dad made on an annual basis. And I was like, what? And I wanted to make sure that I could replicate that experience for, everyone, right? Because I was one of the very few in my community that went to college and went to a private university, and then I got a master's and obtained a job in the private sector. And I think as the person who came from Brooklyn, who had this experience, who was first gen, who, started the career in the private sector, that it was my job to go back and let people know that, you can live your life by the decisions you make and not by the default circumstances that you find yourself in. And my co-founder and I has a very similar trajectory. And so when we got together, to talk about our experiences, in tech, I think that kind of laid out the blueprint on the back of coffee shop napkins for what we wanted to do with young people.
Mhm.
And I also say that it also took a lot of people in the beginning, to really believe in what we were trying to build as well. So part of the social entrepreneurship journey is also understanding that it takes a village to raise our children,
Mhm.
and it takes a community to actually see opportunities for everyone be possible. And so Evan and I recognize that we don't do that work in silos, and very much a part of our social entrepreneurship journey is, the thought that like we are co-conspirators with other people on the path to liberation for communities that look like us.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's powerful. And, even as I think about just a bit of what you've been sharing, both the pathway to the kind of work that you've been doing within the tech space, and also just your own personal journey, it makes me think about the tech industry as a whole, right? And how so often a number of folks who are in leadership positions or who are entrepreneurs in the space don't often look like people like you and me. And so how how have you navigated um, this space as a woman of color? Has that ever been a challenge or an issue, or um, what's just kind of generally been your approach as you've navigated this world?
Yeah. Every day I am reminded that I am one of the very few Latinas in our country that runs a nonprofit that has a budget over $1 million at the
Mm,
national level.
mm,
And I would love to say that I am proud of that. But to be honest with you, because of the fact that we've been here for a minute now,
mm,
can't say that I'm proud, right? Like it's a very big weight to carry, because my role with America on Tech is not to be a representative for women in leadership, is not to be a representative for um, women of color in leadership, or Latinas in leadership, or Black and brown people in leadership, right? My role is to create pathways for other people, right? And so that's always been my mindset. However, because of the fact that I came into the space with just wanting to provide opportunities, I was very naive about who, who I was as a woman of color, and who I was as a woman, and who I was as a brown girl was going to absolutely play a role in the way that I create opportunities. And so outside of having to navigate my responsibilities with America on Tech and creating these pathways, I was also like increasingly aware of the inequitable access to capital that women of color in leadership have in order to create opportunities. I was also increasingly aware of the fact that a lot of times I would step into rooms where I was the youngest person, or I was the darkest person, or I was the person with the curliest hair. And I just had really big questions as to how it was possible that I got there. And yet so many people that I know that could be there were not there with me. And in terms of how I've navigated that, it's just knowing that, one, I owe it to the little brown girl in Brooklyn who's looking at me and saying, like, can I succeed, to make sure that I succeed, and taking on that responsibility and recognizing that by default of me being in this space, I'm giving other people permission to do the same. And then two, recognizing that now that I've come into a place where I have access to connections and capital and a network. Granted, it's not robust, right? Like I wouldn't say that it's still, I would still say it's still inequitable access, but I'm not where I started. That it is my journey to make sure that I'm lifting as I climb. Because sometimes we are making the choices between, where we want to go and where we're from. And I'm from the mindset that you can be in two worlds, and you can absolutely bring people along with you for this journey. So it's absolutely been terrifying at times, especially when people are talking to you in a language that you're not familiar with, or people tend to use acronyms to say some of the most simple things. And because of the fact that, like, I founded the organization and I didn't come from a traditional nonprofit background, I remember feeling like an imposter a lot of times. And also because of the fact that a lot of times, the people who hold the dollars in this space are, white people who are not in close proximity to your communities, is recognizing that, building allies across differences are going to be important. And I need to stop looking for people that look like me in this space and start becoming the person I'm looking for, so that when the next generation of people are looking for representatives, that I have now become that person.
I mean, yeah, I think that is so often, especially, be it both on the nonprofit side, be it both on sort of like the startup entrepreneurial for-profit side, I think we're always looking for either that investor, that sponsor, that that other those partnerships that might not necessarily kind of historically be uh, folks like us. And I mean, just that point about kind of being that person that you're looking for is a real important way of kind of reframing how you can look at really building something that is sustainable, not just for the efforts that you're trying to champion, but for the communities that you're passionate about serving. So, I mean, there are a couple of things that you touched on that I'd love to kind of get more of your thoughts on. So one, this idea of imposter syndrome. I mean, that was something that you just mentioned being a challenge when you started out. What what was the process of being able to overcome that, or just challenge that in different ways for you to ultimately kind of be that person that you wish you had, or envision to be able to work with as you're navigating these spaces? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I think that I have learned how to self-care, and recognizing that the reason why things have nothing to do with me, and it has to do a lot with a historical precedence that's been set way before I even got to planet Earth, right?
Mhm,
And I'm feeling the effects of the things that have happened. So recognizing that self-care is going to be important in the way that I visualize myself and my standing in the world in these spaces. I
mhm,
think the second thing is recognizing that everyone is an imposter to some capacity, and knowing that I'm not alone in these feelings makes me feel in community with others, because I have a group of really strong leaders around me all of the time that I can tap into when I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and they make themselves available to me.
mhm,
And I think the third thing is recognizing that I am more than qualified to be in any space that has been granted to me, because the divine powers of the universe and the will of the cosmos will not create or open doors for me if I was not supposed to be in these spaces. And so recognizing that there is some kind of faith attached, and some kind of destiny attached to my path, that while I may not feel like I belong in a certain space, I need to recognize that if the door has opened, then there's a reason why it has opened, and I need to fulfill my duty. And I think those are the three things that really guide me on a daily basis now, especially in the moments when I'm feeling like an imposter. But yeah. Oh, wait, you know what? And I think back on the qualification tip, I would say is recognizing that sometimes the people that are in the room with you, um, maybe they didn't have to work as hard, right? Like, and because of the fact that they didn't have to work as hard, they also might be imposters, right? And so I think for me, I think that's the mind frame that I operate in the moments where I'm feeling like I shouldn't be in a specific space.
yeah, no, that really resonates. It's actually something um, that I had recently heard Shelley Archambault of. She had recently wrote a book called Unapologetically Ambitious, and she speaks very much about the whole imposter syndrome uh, cycle, and how really part of that is just owning, whether it's kind of faking it till you make it, or just going through um, really believing all of the people who are saying you are awesome, you can do this, to actually believe them. So a lot of what you are saying really uh, echoes a lot of what she also mentions. So, you speak about imposter syndrome as kind of one challenge that you've overcome or just actively been addressing. What would you say is something or a number of things, accomplishments or wins within the course of your journey as a social entrepreneur that you're really proud of?
Mhm. Um, it's always when one of my students win. So I always feel, I mean, I think folks would look at like my curriculum vitae, right? And say like, oh my God, you have so many things to be proud of, like this award, that network. But in true form and fashion, like none of that really matters if I went to bed feeling like I didn't actually do the things that I set out to do, which was make an
Mhm,
impact on young people. And so the most important moments for me are when a student says, thank you. It could literally just be thank you, and that's it. Um,
mhm,
the proudest moments for me are when a student gets an internship, when a student tags us on social media about a job opportunity that they got through our network. When I receive an email from a student that is just catching me up on their life.
mhm,
Um, when we hire, every time we make an announcement about our peer mentor program, because we hire alums back into our organization after they've graduated to create temporary employment opportunities for them. And every time we, I would honestly, every time we get some funding to do our work, because we know that this work is costly. And, to see like folks who want to write checks and invest into our organization really means a lot, because it feels like they understand the problem that we're trying to solve, and they believe that we're the organization to help solve that problem. So I think those are the moments that are always the ones that I am most proud of. Yeah.
Now I think that is what those of us doing work, not only within the social impact space, but also kind of with an eye or a lens toward inclusion, should aspire to, really ensuring that the work that we're doing is actually meeting the needs of the very people that we are committed to serving. And one of the things that come to mind, even as I think about just seeing the wins of these students, knowing that in order to get the right kind of support for the students that you're working with, for your organization as a whole, you have to have the right partners in place, right? And you were speaking earlier about finding the right collaborators and allies. And, I know that even some of your partners sometimes can be within the corporate context and elsewhere. So I'm curious, kind of particularly within the corporate setting, what is it that you look for when you're trying to find the right kind of partner and ally in this work?
Yeah, for sure. I think that and not every partnership is the same, I should say that. And so there are some folks who are just wanting to invest in America on Tech, and that's it. And we submit them a report, and then that's all they want from America on Tech. And the moments where you try to activate a little bit more, there's a little bit of resistance, just because they also don't have the capacity to carry out strong like partnerships with us. They only have the capacity to write a check. So for me, the most important partnerships and the most exciting ones are when companies get involved, not only on the financial side of the organization, but involve their employees as volunteers in our programs, when they host interns, at their organization over the summer or throughout the year, when they hire our students, when they sponsor a cohort of students, or when they host a career day or some kind of event that is student facing, where they get to actually meet the young people who are in our programs and invite them into their spaces. And so I think that when we're looking for partnerships, we're always looking for partners who want to go more deep with us outside of just the fundraising piece of this, that helps us accomplish a lot of our programmatic goals that are not tied to fundraising. And I also think that the way that you vet for that is actually inquiring, and posing questions during the solicitation process, and during the partnership process, because I think what ends up happening a lot of times is that you get into rooms with people who want to fund your work, and you just make the financial ask. But I think Evan and I, and just our team in general, are from the frame of mind of like killing two birds with one stone. So if you are at a company and I know you have access to a whole bunch of employees, and I know you have access to, space, and I know you have access to probably an employee volunteer portal, my questions for you are going to be beyond just the financial ask, because I know you have these things accessible to you. And so I think it's just asking better questions up front that lead you to understand how you can partner with organizations, and not being afraid, to ask for too much, because I think the thing that made us, decently successful. Like I wouldn't say, we are the most successful nonprofit. I think the thing that has,
Hopefully successful, I would say.
yeah, I think we're successful. But I wouldn't say like, we are the OGs, for lack of a better word, in the
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that has made us successful in such a short period of time is the fact that Evan and I are not shy to ask for things from partners. And we're going to ask you for the world. And if you give us the world, then great. If you don't give us the world, at least we know that we made the ask because it was for the greater good of our students.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think, a number of things come to mind, largely just even when it comes to negotiations or just asking for what you're, what you deserve. Oftentimes, women, are less likely to ask for the fullness of what they deserve, and even more so women of color. So it sounds like there are also just some barriers there that you're shattering just by virtue of you and Evan showing up and making sure that you're making the best case for your students, which is powerful. I guess one of my last questions I have is really around right now the reality that we in which we find ourselves, which is this COVID pandemic situation. A number of nonprofits, hybrid organizations, companies have had to adapt and shift to the realities that are. How have you found your work with America on Tech? Has it been a challenge shifting to that reality, and how have you all gone about doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So it was so interesting because, you know, so earlier in early March, we felt something coming. We didn't know it was going to be this. We did feel something coming. So we ended up stocking up on Lysol wipes and some face masks and gloves and things like that. And our intentions were, to wipe down our classrooms, to wipe down our computers, and just create safe space. When when the middle of March hit and social distancing became a requirement and a big ask, everything shut down. Like our corporate partners' offices shut down, schools shut down, parents were losing jobs, our students were afraid. And so there were a lot of things that happened in the middle of March when social distancing first occurred that I would say sent us obviously into crisis management mode. What I'm very happy to say is that we didn't have any interruptions to our program. So all of our technology is already online. So our curriculum is online. It's accessible via mobile and via web. All of our projects that students do can be done on a web browser. And all of the things that students need, everything was already in the digital space. So we didn't have to migrate anything to a digital environment because everything was already there. What we really needed to do was actually implement a strong communications plan with our students, our volunteers, our parents, and our corporate partners, and our board and our staff in order to give them the run of show of how things were going to migrate virtually and how they can access our classes and how, we were going to make the transition. And so from a programmatic standpoint, we didn't experience any interruptions to our programming. And we were able to continue, serving students, and we're still continuing to serve students every day. So we finished off our spring in a virtual environment, finished and started our summer in a virtual environment, and started and finished are about to finish our fall in a virtual environment as well. And I think that, for us, this was a moment of one, realizing that the inequities that our students face are very true. They were disproportionately affected by the events of COVID-19. Outside of that, they were also affected by the other pandemic, which is racial injustice in our country. There's a lot of social unrest for our students. So to add to um, to add to a time where everything is uncertain, now they also felt unsafe. We had to implement a number of like town halls. So we had a town hall on COVID-19 to give everyone a status of like what our plan of actions were, how they can access us, gave them access to a COVID-19 page, a resource page that we developed on our website, and continue to send them emails about Wi-Fi. We deployed laptops to families. It was a lot. And then, we had to host town halls on, the status of Black lives in our country, and letting our students know that while the world is saying this to them, this is what we believe they are. And we believe that they are full of promise and potential. 2020 has been a very difficult year for our young people and for our staff, because we take on the emotional toll of the things that are going on in our world, going on with our students, and our staff are also primarily Black and Brown people, that are disproportionately affected by these same things as well. And so, I'm very proud of the work that we've done over the last several months. And I feel like we've supported our staff and our students and our volunteers and our board and our corporate partners as best we could, with the move to digital. I'm also proud to say that we've seen some silver linings in programming, because we teach technology. Students have learned technology in a very different way this year that I think is going to inform us of how we move forward with our program and how we change our model for 2021. But this pandemic has really, exposed things that we already knew. And I hope that it exposes it for the greater good, or these pandemics, I should say, have really taken a toll on everyone in 2020. And I think that this is the year where folks realize that we need to start getting it right, and start prioritizing our communities.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're touching on something that I think a number of organizations and companies have been wrestling with right now, with all that has been happening in over the past few months, and this racial reckoning that people are referring to this moment as. It is really prompting folks to act differently. And so just, some parting words that you might offer to us and sort of the viewers here. What do you think it would take to really meet this moment with the right kinds of actions that are necessary to create greater opportunities for the communities that have historically been disconnected from the right kinds of opportunities, and also for a bit of healing that sounds, is necessary for, I think, us as a society to be able to move forward?
Yeah, for sure. I think one is everyone needs to recognize the difference between authenticity and transparency. So transparency is saying like, this is the issue. Authenticity is saying, this is the issue and this is the role I think I play in it. And so I think it's really understanding the difference between transparency and authenticity. I also think that it is an opportunity for everyone to really think about the differences between being non-racist and actively anti-racist, because non-racist is, recognizing that something is wrong, and trying to make sure that you don't do it. But being actively anti-racist is about accountability and naming things and calling things out when it matters. and ensuring that, you're protecting spaces. And I think another thing is recognizing that it is okay to rebuild. I feel like a lot of times people are like, well, if it's not broken, let's not fix it. And I actually come from the frame of mind of I'm okay with dismantling any systems that oppress anybody and rebuilding from scratch, regardless of whether or not it takes us a long time to do it. Because once a system has already been broken and has already been built on a shaky foundation, just trying to revamp it does not mean that it's still not a shaky foundation. It just means you added some glue on it. So what would be really great is if people could commit to dismantling all systems that oppress people, and then really rebuilding from scratch and not being afraid to do so. And I think probably the last thing I'll say is everyone understanding that no one is free until everyone is free. And I felt that in my heart. I got a little emotional. But I think it's really understanding that no one is free until everyone is free. And the game we're playing right now is not about how do I preserve what's mine and still give to other people that might not have had. It's about how do I make sure that what I have, everyone else does have too. And being responsible for our neighbors and being responsible for our community members, and shifting from an individualistic mindset to more of a collectivist mindset.
Absolutely. Jessica, thank you so much for just your time and sharing, just offering some gems through this conversation. I mean, it is really important, not only just the work that you're doing, but just the way in which you're showing up within this field and this space. And so for anyone that is interested in following you on your journey or supporting your work, how can people get involved?
For sure. Thank you for having me. For those who are interested in getting in touch, feel free to follow at America on Tech on all platforms. We're always seeking sponsors, we're always seeking volunteers, we're always seeking opportunities. And then for all of you who want to connect with me personally, you can find me at Jess Worldwide on all platforms as well.
Gotcha. You said Jess Worldwide?
Yes, Jess Worldwide.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you again so much, Jessica. And I certainly look forward to continuing to follow you on your journey to just messing some stuff up in a good way.
For sure. Me too. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Same.